I do a lot of work with new supervisors, and one of the questions that always comes up during our training day is this: how do I motivate employees? And my answer to that is wrong question. What we really should be asking is, how do I create an environment where employees are motivated? Because let me tell you this simple truth: you can't motivate anyone. Only they can motivate themselves. So let's explore how that shows up in the workplace. You know, one of the keys to exploring this topic is to understand that when we are motivated as individuals, what happens is that motivation can be extrinsic or intrinsic. And really, the extrinsic is something that happens apart from us, outside of us. So that's giving someone a bonus, giving someone a company car, or giving them recognition. And then there is intrinsic motivation. This is motivation that comes from within, something that is psychologically pleasing to the person and motivates them. When it comes to creating a motivational workplace, we're going to focus more on the latter, intrinsic, rather than the former, extrinsic, because in there lies the clue to having more workplace engagement. The first thing is to recognize the values and the vision of you as a leader and of the organization. You know, when we become a leader, many people think that we just kind of begin the job and that's it, and people will get to know us. I often challenge new leaders to begin with a very clear, thought out process. And part of that process is to be able to express what your values are and what your vision is. Because people need to know. They need to know where you are going. They need to know what you value. And they also need to know what's the bigger picture. Because people go to work and they want meaning in that work. You know, if work is nothing more than drudgery, something where we're clicking our time card in and out, then what we're going to see in that workplace is a lack of motivation and potentially high turnover. When people feel part of a greater value system, when those values align with their values, when they feel they're playing part of something that is bigger than themselves, then we're moving to an environment that becomes incredibly motivating. The second area is employee recognition. Now, part of this is extrinsic in the sense that we may give people an extra bonus, or we may give them a gift. Or it can be intrinsic as well, because we're expressing to them that they are a valuable part of the organization. But what's really important when it comes to recognition is that it is heartfelt, it is meaningful, and it is individualized to that particular person. And if you're going to do that, it requires one thing. It means that you have to listen and get to know each of your employees. I'm always amazed at leaders who I meet, at the difference between those who have done this, who have taken time, who know what is going on in each of their different employees, who are able to put their hand on what it is that excites them, what their dreams are, what their gifts are, what their challenges are, and others who are a little clueless, haven't really taken the time because I don't have time to do that. The problem and the cost of that is that you're not able to personalize recognition. You're not able to tailor it towards them. You're not able to challenge them in the way that will be exciting and will show them that they're growing. The third area is autonomy. People love to have eventually autonomy in their job. They love to have a little bit of space, that they have autonomy to make decisions, even if they mess up at the beginning in some of those decisions. People love to have flexibility, perhaps, in the way that a job is done and the time in which they're doing that job. This is also a challenge for the leader. Very often I find that leaders have a real tough time in delegating things to other people. Now, this is not surprising, because as a new leader, very often what's happened is that we kind of like the things that we were doing before because we knew what success looks like. If I can finish these 4 things, I'm going to be successful. Leadership is something that's a little more nebulous. And so therefore, it's very easy for us to take control of those things and not delegate the things that we should be delegating out. So I often suggest to leaders, do a delegation audit. Everything you're doing, write it down, and at the end of a few weeks, look at that and see, is there anything here that I could give to another person? Is there anything here that would be a challenge and an opportunity for them to grow in a task? And also create for you the benefit of being able to shift some work so that you can focus on other things. Number 4 is the environment. Now, study after study has shown that when the environment is open, is light, is bright, that people tend to have higher levels of motivation and productivity. Now, I hear some of you will say, look, I'm afraid there's nothing I can do about that. The building is what it is. And I say, yeah, but is there any way of changing the environment even within the building you're given? Is there ways of increasing trust among the team? Is there a way of influencing the positivity of the space that people are in? The environment, therefore, is an incredibly important piece, both the extrinsic, the external, in that the building itself, but also the internal. What's the emotional mood and temperature? What's the level of trust? All of that is incredibly important when it comes to creating a motivating workplace. Number 5 is clarity around advancement. People want to know, what does it take to get to the next level? What do I have to do? People want some clarity around their professional development. If you can take interest in people, if you can mentor people, if you can clearly delineate what are the areas in which they need to grow, people will find that incredibly motivating, because so often this is an area that is confusing and unclear, and people are wondering, well, what do I need to do to get a promotion? If you can actively walk with the person, mentor them, help them see what areas they need to develop, then you're creating the potential for a highly motivated employee. Number 6 is transparency. You know, as leaders, it's really important for us to be transparent in what we are doing. Very often I'll run into leaders who, with all good intentions, who are trying to protect employees. What they create instead is a feeling within those same employees that in some way they're hiding things, they're not being open, and it impacts trust. Let me show you a perfect example. A few months ago, I was working with a leader who was grasping with the reality that they had to tell bad news to employees. And what was happening was that the company, the higher-ups had made a decision, and now they had to transmit and communicate that decision. She knew that employees would be devastated by this news, so instead of just coming out and being transparent and saying the decision had been made, what she did was she asked them for different ideas about how they might go about solving this problem. And then, after a little bit of time, she told them that the management had decided something different. Eventually, of course, the employees found out that the decision had been made and that whole exercise was meaningless. So it was all with good intention that it was done. However, it was received as hiding something and not being transparent. So the lesson here is, to the extent that we possibly can, let's be transparent. That builds trust, and trust and transparency are highly motivating for employees. Finally, it's seek input. Employees want to feel that they're part of something bigger. They want to feel as well that their input matters. And so therefore, set up systems where employees can comment on a whole host of different areas, are freely able to give their ideas, are able to perhaps suggest things that might be going wrong, and also to suggest solutions to those problems. What we know is that organizations that are open to the depth of the knowledge of each and every person in the organization, or organizations that make better decisions, organizations that are more successful, organizations that are more motivating. So there you have it, 7 different ways that can create potentially a highly motivating workplace. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear perhaps some of the ways that you've discovered that are highly motivating both for you, or perhaps you're in organizations that you feel have done a great job when it comes to motivation. It's great to share those pieces of information so that we can all learn from each other and also create workplaces that are more sane and more motivating. And if you've really enjoyed this video, I would like to suggest another video where we really look into motivation and the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation.